Hello,
Um,
hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited that we were able to do this today.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited for our talk.
Me too. So I wrote down the main questions that I was going to have you address today.
Okay.
We'll let our guest go first. So, do you want to give yourself a little introduction?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Jazmine. I am a clinical psychologist. I work primarily with children and families in my private practice. And then I also have two toddlers, Jayla and Jalea. Jayla will be 2 in April already, and then Jalea just turned 3. So they're 15 months apart.
Wow.
Yes, so we all have our hands full over here.
Yes. Wow. That's intense. Well,
Yes, so I know all about toy battles and tantrums and separation anxiety and all that stuff that I'm going to be diving into today.
yes. So the
I have my
first question.
notes too.
Okay.
I don't get off
Um,
track.
Perfect. So the first question was, there was quite a lot about this, was how to handle dangerous behavior without always saying no.
Yes, and I love this mom's question. I just recently read a statistic about how toddlers hear the word no about 400 times in a day, which is crazy intense, right? And I think it is our
Mhm.
go-to for great reason, for a good reason, right? It commonly comes out of habit. And I think I want to first point out that when your toddler or child in general is behaving in dangerous behaviors, it's absolutely okay to fall back on that word. Do what you need to do to ensure their safety by all means. Just keeping in mind that from day-to-day things, toddlers can burn out on this word because they hear it so much. So for safety or danger related things, I would say absolutely do what you need to do to keep them safe, but then use that time after you've established safety to reinforce your reasons behind the word no, right? So if they're darting into the street, by all means yell, no, come back, right, to get their attention. And then you can use some time afterwards to debrief on safety and the importance of holding your hand or staying close because of cars, for example. And then from day-to-day things, I think it's really important to be very specific on what you want them to do. So instead of, no, don't run, it's please use your walking feet, right? Or don't throw that
Mhm.
toy or don't throw that food on the ground. It's please keep the food or the toy in your hand, right? Or
Mhm.
roll it on the ground or whatever it is you want them to do. So I think in these moments, it can get really overwhelming, right? And so you want to take a step back and pause for a second and think
Mhm.
about, okay, what do I need my child to do differently right now in this moment? And then how can I convey that in very simple and easy to follow directions? Like, please use your
Mhm.
walking feet. Please keep the water in the bathtub. Please keep the ball in your hand. Those kind of things, because saying words like no, don't, stop, quit can be seen as critical statements, right? And it doesn't really do
Yeah.
much other than to say they've done something bad, but it doesn't tell them what they can do differently. So those are my
Right.
sort of tips there.
One of the things, I'm sure you're familiar with Janet Lansbury's work. Um,
Yes, yes, I love her.
I have to say one of my favorite phrases that's been like incredibly freeing as a parent is her phrase of "I'm not going to let you do that."
Yes, yes, I can't let you do that. Yes, yes.
Right. So for hitting, for anything that's kind of violent, especially towards you, or they're going to touch something that they know that they shouldn't be doing. Often they know that they shouldn't be doing it, but they can't stop themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
being able to be the interventionist and physically stop them, set the boundary, also sets you as the leader, which they also need.
Right, exactly, exactly. And coming from that place of, I'm going to keep you safe, right? I'm going to help you through this difficult moment, right? Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And much of it too is in our demeanor, right? In our nonverbal language as well, of just being sure to communicate that I'm going to help you through this. We'll get through this
right.
together.
I love that you use the example of running out into traffic, because my preschooler did this recently. Like it was in a busy car park. We were in Las Vegas, and I very rarely shout, but she was running around the other side of the car. Dad was on the other side, going to put her in, but she knows that she's not supposed to run on the road. And I did like yell because I was so afraid of a car. And then when she got in the car and everybody had like calmed down, I actually used that as a moment to like give a very sincere apology. Because I know that there's always a lot of questions about making children apologize. Like the best way for them to learn what it actually is to apologize is to actually apologize to them in a sincere way.
Yes. I love that. Right. Using that moment to apologize for using loud words and yelling, but, you know, also reinforcing your reason behind that to help them understand those safety.
Right. And hopefully they don't run onto the road again, because that's like...
right. Use it as a teaching moment.
Right. My heart like stopped. Yeah.
Yes. It's really frightening, right? Yeah. Worst fears come up. Oh, and I hear somebody saying, I love this. It's important to raise emotionally healthy humans, not just humans who follow orders. Yes,
absolutely.
I love that. Such a good point. Right?
I love that too. In fact, it's like when we say to children that they're not listening, they are listening, they're just not obeying. Right?
Exactly. They're making a different choice in that moment.
Exactly. And of course there have to be, you know, boundaries around that, but it's something that I've caught myself saying to my child recently, where she's listening, she's just not doing.
For sure. And, you know, really honoring that they have a choice too. And of course we can set limits, but honoring their own autonomy and choices.
Absolutely. And I love what Middle Eastern Mum has written here. I love apologizing to my baby girl. I feel it gives her a warm feeling that Mummy makes mistakes. Mummy is just like you. And that's really true. I like that reflection a lot.
Yes, exactly. Normalizing that. We all make mistakes and that's okay, right? It's okay to
make
mistakes.
And I think this actually kind of segues nicely into the next. There were a lot of questions around this theme. Tips for sibling rivalry and jealousy, because I know that there can be a lot of no, don't do that. And I know with my two kids, the baby, she's not really a baby anymore, she's 18 months, but I feel bad for her because my older one yells at her no a lot. So let's dive into that one, please.
My older one likes to do that too.
Yeah.
Yes, and I wrote down, so this was one of the questions was from a mom who had a 17-month-old who had started to hit or bite and pinch her siblings when upset. And I first want to start by saying that some of these behaviors, especially the aggression, while we want to set limits around it, of course, and make sure everybody is safe, it is also important to keep in mind that these types of things are developmentally appropriate, especially for 17-month-olds, because they're still learning how to communicate, right? They're still learning about their emotional world. They tend to be very self-focused, right? They've just figured out that they are a separate being from their parent, and they're coming into their own self, right? So they tend to be very self-focused, very impulsive, very me, mine. And it's hard to take other people's perspectives into consideration. And I mean, think about it for us too, when we're upset. It's hard to take other people's perspectives, like our spouses, into perspective during times of heightened emotions. And so keeping this in mind, I think, is the first step as parents, keeping our child's developmental ages and stages in mind is important. Now, of course, like I said in the beginning, we always want to set limits to these behaviors, right? And we always want to keep people safe. And so I love how you mentioned Janet Lansbury's work just previously, because that is something that I recommend. Using those types of phrases and statements during those moments can be very helpful. I can't let you do that. I see you really want to hurt right now. I see you're frustrated, labeling the feeling, validating that feeling, but then also keeping everybody safe. So that might look like putting your hand out if they go to hit you or hit their sibling, removing their hand gently if they're pulling hair or biting, whatever it looks like. You're going to want to stop that behavior, of course, while also sending the message that it's okay to feel these feelings, and you can let me know how you feel in other ways, can be very beneficial. But for in the moment, I would just say stop that behavior and say something like, I see you want to hit. It's okay to feel frustrated, but bodies are not for hurting. I like to say that bodies are not for hurting. Our hands are not for hurting. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to keep everybody safe.
And really welcoming that. My example would be that my baby took a toy that the older one was playing with, even though she wasn't playing with it at that moment. She didn't like that the other child took it. Yes, that I can understand why that's upsetting, but like to really actually feel that way. Imagine if, a spouse or somebody took something that you were using, but not right at that very second, and then like took it away and left the room with it. Like you'd probably also be kind of upset and legitimately understand that the child is legitimately having a feeling about that. They're not doing it just to do it.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's always important to keep in mind, while conflict stresses us out, right? It's not very fun to see our children engaging in toy battles and in conflict and sibling rivalry. But if we can remember that these opportunities are really actually good, that conflict is good because it helps teach them important life skills like problem solving and negotiating, right? And communicating our needs and our feelings, taking turns. I mean, all of these things, they're going to learn best through these difficult moments. And so if we can take a role as our children's coach, our children's emotional coach, right? Point out what we see. Sports, I love to say, like, be the sportscaster, right? Point out what you see without making any judgment, right? And believe me, it's so hard.
Yeah.
I have two little ones, right? And the bigger one likes to, kind of gang up, if you will, and assert her dominance and control, right? Because that's something that she's sort of trying to figure out, is her places in this relationship. But so it's important just to sportscast what you see without judgment, right? And try to help them problem solve it through without, I guess, solving their problems for them, which is hard. It's hard to do that though in the moment, but important.
It is. And also this kind of leads into the next question, which included about mean words, but also in that non-judgmental thing that you were just saying, that we don't label them as being mean or doing the wrong thing or being bad. Like it's very easy to just say, like, the baby, stole the toy or whatever, but the baby didn't steal the toy. She was examining the toy, and that's what she wanted to look at. Our minds tend to go to those very negative places when we're labeling things like that, but that's not what most kids like. I don't think that's what really any child is actually stealing a toy. They're
right. And somebody just
it.
asked. Yeah, and somebody just asked a question about sportscasting, so I can just kind of expand on that idea a little bit.
Yeah.
Sportscasting basically means, how when you're watching a sports show or whatever, basketball game or whatever, and the sportscaster is describing play by play what's happening in so much detail that you don't even need to watch the game to understand what's going on. That's kind of what you're going to do when you sportscast your child's behaviors, right? So, I see that such and such was playing with this toy, and you really wanted to play with that toy too, and I saw you get frustrated, and then you took the toy, or then you pushed them down. See how I'm very nonchalant about it? I'm not labeling anybody as good or bad or right or wrong, right? I'm just simply describing what I see in a non-judgmental way, also describing feelings that come up. You were so excited to look at that toy, then you got frustrated when you realized you couldn't have it, and then you pushed, right? All of this is basically teaching our child to slow down, understand what's going on in their own bodies, as well as the consequences of what happens when they make choices like pushing people down and then they get sad, that kind of thing. It takes a little bit of extra intention and work behind it, but it goes a long way in helping your child learn those important skills. Oh, and we're getting
Right.
some comments. Let's see. Examples. Okay, cool. I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any or need any other examples. I would tell my child, that's okay. I know you're upset, but sometimes the other kids could be unfair. You should let them know that you're upset and ask them not to do whatever they did again. Yeah, yeah. And I think, so let's go into the mean words thing, because I think that will be something that I think that was a question that came up, especially, I think if I'm remembering correctly, this was a mom of an 8-year-old who said mean things like, you're mean, or I hate you. I think when those things kind of come up, I know it can be very, let's say, overwhelming, frustrating, confusing to hear those words, right? And it's easy to want to lash out and say, what do you mean? Like, that's so mean of you, or say something back to them, right? Because we become stressed and offended in those moments. But I think if we can remember that our child is having a hard time, they're not trying to give us a hard time, that any kind of misbehavior or mean words is really a sign that they're not doing good internally, and that it's not about you or your parenting. It's good to keep in mind. You can set a limit around it. Like, it's really hard for me to understand you when you use mean words. I'd really love to hear what you have to say. When you can use kind words, I'd love to listen. Something like that, something to that effect, to draw that limit around it. While also just trying to understand where they're coming from and getting to the underlying feeling. Are they feeling sad? Are they feeling scared? Are they feeling angry? And if so, why? I think taking time to address that and less so focusing on the outward manifestation of their feelings is important.
Right. It's almost like when two adults, say a husband and a wife, get into an argument when they're really charged and angry. At the top of their anger mountain, they can really say things that they don't mean, and they're not the things that they want to be saying. But if you can kind of take it back to even having them work through what the feelings are, like, I can tell you're upset. What's causing you to be upset? And the other thing that I think it was also in probably several of Janet Lansbury's podcasts is not taking things personally, which is like extremely difficult. But when you can, it's almost like an out-of-body experience where you're hearing all these words, but you're not absorbing them because your child isn't your peer in the same way that your spouse is. You just can't take things personally. It'd be a very hard way to parent if you took everything personally.
Right.
Your child hates you, or they want to hit you.
Yeah, but, no, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like flipping it. I again, going back to Janet Lansbury, which I'm sure you'll find this as well. When they're lashing out like that, it's a very backhanded compliment that they feel safe enough to do that in front of you. And it definitely feels like the worst thing ever, but they're doing it because they feel safe in front of you.
Yes, absolutely. You are their secure attachment, right? Exactly. That's really good. That's a really good reframe to give yourself, right? That my child feels safe to, sharing these difficult, messy feelings with me. And the way that I can help is to show up and be present, regulate my own feelings in this moment, calm myself down so I can show up for them. While realizing this is not about me. This is about their big feelings, and they need my help in processing it all out. Yeah.
Right. Which is really difficult in the moment.
Absolutely. Takes like 100%.
It is.
Yes, and we won't always get this right. And so going back to the beginning of what we talked about repairing is so important, right? Because we're not going to always get this right. And sometimes we're going to lash out when we get upset, and just recognizing that, okay, it happened. And, what can I do now moving forward? I can apologize to my child if I've said something mean and make a plan to do better, kind of thing. Right.
Exactly.
Yep. Let me see if I have any other notes about that. So there was And then the hitting, I think I already talked about setting limits around aggressive behaviors, but let me know if you guys have any other questions around like hitting. The throwing is a little bit interesting, right? If kids start throwing in anger, I think it's important to set limits around that as well, right? And also keeping in mind that young children especially need lots of opportunities for play and movement, and sometimes their behavioral issues will come out because maybe they're not getting enough opportunities for playing and throwing and kicking and all of those things that they need to get their energies out. So if you see them, I guess, throwing something, you can give them two choices. You have two choices. You can roll the ball, or we can go outside and throw the ball, right? And so giving them sort of kind of thinking about, okay, well, what might they need in this moment, and how can I offer that to them, whether it's throwing a ball or pounding Play-Doh or dancing or moving around, running and jumping, those kind of things to get that out can be helpful.
Those little bits of physical movement, like jumping or even going outside. There's research, I think it was that I read this in the Whole Brain Child, where they talk about there's a connection in the brain that when you've flipped your lid and you've kind of gone into the place where you're not being rational, exercising, and I don't obviously mean that you like take your child on a run, but maybe like put on some music and jump up and down with them, or take them outside. That can help them reconnect those two areas of their brain where they're not in that state of being completely the upstairs and downstairs, parts of the brain that aren't connected.
Yes, absolutely. It's about integrating the emotional and the logical parts of the brain, and the idea being if you release those feelings and do different things, that when they calm down, they can kind of have a better sense of logic, if you will, right? Because when they're
they can access those centers.
Yeah, exactly. Because when they're offline, having a tantrum, engaging in aggressive behaviors, that's a good sign that their emotional brain is full on, and the logical part is offline. Yes, so we can bring them down to baseline, and then we can start to problem solve, speak reason to them, plan for the future, those kinds of things. But of course, we can't do those things in the moment because they simply cannot hear you.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think that's a source of frustration for parents, is that you want to be able to talk your child back down from where they are, but the reality is that the logical part of their brain is not accessible in those moments. Exactly.
And when we realize that, then it becomes really clear what we need to do in those moments is to regulate them by holding space, validating their feelings, of course, keeping everybody safe in the meantime too as well.
Right. And letting the feelings come out, even if that is a lot of screaming, which in my house is a lot of screaming.
Yes, and I think too, there's this misconception of if I do all this stuff, if I validate, if I say it's okay, blah, 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 I'm going to get them to stop. And then we can have this pressure of, okay, why isn't this stopping? They need to stop crying. And so I think coming from a place of, I'm going to allow this space. It can take however long it needs to take. I'm going to regulate my feelings in the meantime, because it's really hard to sit with, and just trusting in the process that they know what to do with their feelings. They just need those opportunities to let them out in safe ways and with safe people.
Exactly.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm like hijacking this live here.
No, you can hijack it. It's yours. This is very helpful. I'm sure this will help a lot of the parents that are tuning in.
Thank you.
There were a lot of questions. We're kind of shifting gears here. There were a lot of questions about helping children that have anxiety. Mostly in the 10-month to 2 years range, but most of the questions I think were at the younger age.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about both. I'm going to talk about separation anxiety really briefly, and then I'm going to also talk about like general childhood fears just for a second, and then I'll be almost done. But separation anxiety, I know, is a big one. I get this question so much. So I first want to start by saying it's completely normal. It tends to happen around 6 to 7 months when your kiddo is beginning to understand the idea of object permanence, which just basically means that they understand you exist even when they can't see you, right? Which leads to them missing you and wanting you back. Before that, they didn't understand that concept. And so you just literally disappeared. when you left the room. But now they know, oh wait, mom's in the other room. She needs to come back. Okay. So it
Right.
tends to peak, or I mean, it tends to start around 6-7 months. It can peak around 9 to 10 months when your baby has a better sense of routines and what's happening, especially like right before separations. They kind of catch on to that, and that can make them highly anxious. And then another time it tends to peak is around 13-14 months, when their like receptive speech doesn't match up with their expressive speech, which basically means that they can understand what's happening. They understand your explanations of needing to leave and all of that, but then they can't communicate that, hey, I'm upset right now. I'm going to miss you. I don't want you to go. And so it comes out as like crying, right? Because that's the only way they can really express themselves, right? So I have a post about separation anxiety, so I encourage you guys to check it out. But some quick tips is, if you can, try to make separations a gradual process, right? So if you can, start with 10-15 minutes, then come right back, and then you slowly, gradually increase the time. I know that's not always possible, but when you can, do it in a more gradual way. Keep your goodbyes short and sweet, okay? I know it's hard. We get anxious and upset during these times, and we sense it, and our child senses it, right? So try to keep your goodbyes short and sweet. Make a cute little goodbye routine, whatever works for you guys. You know, I'm going to hug you 3 times. I'm going to kiss you 3 times. We're going to high five and say goodbye. But keep it short and sweet. The other thing is, if you can give them a transitional object, like a certain favorite toy or a picture of you or something with your scent, that can also help babies with adjusting to the transitions. Let me think. And never sneak out, okay? I know it's tempting to sneak out and say, oh, my baby's happy, they're distracted with so-and-so. I'm just going to leave now. This is going to be easy for me and easy for them. But it is actually the opposite. It's very confusing. It's very worrisome, right? For them to not realize that you were about to leave and wonder where you were going. It can have the opposite effect. So don't do that, okay? Right. Even though it's tempting, don't sneak out, okay? So always have a goodbye routine set in place. And I think those are my top tips. Again, check my post on my page about separation anxiety. And then briefly, with regards to general anxiety, I know that came up a lot. I think the biggest thing with anxiety is don't avoid it, okay? So validate the feelings. Let your child know it's completely okay to feel afraid, that you too get afraid from time to time, and that we're going to get through this together, okay? I'm going to share a quick example of how I helped my 3-year-old with this. Around, I think, like 18 months, she developed an intense fear of anxiety around the bathtub. Like all of a sudden, she did not want anything to do with bath time, whereas the day before, she loved it. And so what I did was I said, okay, we're going to take a break for baths, okay? But we're going to start listening to songs and books and TV programs about bath time. Then I bought her a doll with a bathtub in it. And we started playing with the doll and scrubbing the doll and talking about the fun times of the bath. We also role played doll getting really afraid of the bath, but really needing to get clean. And oh, what is she going to do? She's getting upset and she's getting scared, but she's going to do that scary thing anyways. Oh, and she feels better now. It's not as scary as she thought, right? So role playing that a lot. And then we brought the bathtub to the bathroom and we played with the doll, right? Then later we brought the bathtub into the bathtub, the doll toy bathtub into the bathtub, clothes on, no water. Okay, so it's not scary. We're gradually, right? It's called gradual exposure. So you're gradually introducing her to the scary stimuli while also teaching her that it's okay and that she can survive through it, right? Basically. And so we played there. Then we did a little bit of water in the bathtub with clothes off, and then slowly but surely she got used to it and started loving bath time again. So it really does work. Of course, read your child's cues. If she starts getting anxious, that's your cue to kind of back away a little bit, validate the feelings, and try again, right? So you're never going to want to avoid it all completely. All right, we can't avoid bath time anyways, but so it's a gradual, slow process that you're working them through. Hope that was
Right.
helpful.
And I like that what you said, these are some of the things that you're saying to yourself and not necessarily to your child. Like, you're okay, it is safe, you're totally fine. Because if you say that, like a lot of people say that to their kids when they are scared or upset or crying, but by saying that to them is actually very invalidating. Like, imagine if you're afraid of a spider, and you know that's like your spouse is telling you that spider isn't going to hurt you. It's fine. It can crawl on you. It's not going to bite you. It's fine. You know, don't worry. You're fine. You're fine. I don't think you'd feel very fine. Right? Like, it's an intense fear that you have, and that you want to try to avoid minimizing it by saying, oh, it's not a big deal. It's fine. The bath isn't going to hurt you. The spider's not going to hurt you. But that's not how the other person is actually feeling.
Yes, and it can be such a scary place for children to have a feeling, but then it doesn't match up with the feeling you're telling them, right? So if I'm feeling really scared, and it doesn't match up with the message that you don't need to be scared, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, that's a very scary place, right? Because how do I resolve that? How do I make sense of that? And so, yeah, such good points that you mentioned, yeah.
So I think we should close out with, this was a great one, one positive parenting tip for all parents. I'm looking forward to hearing yours.
Yes. You know, the first thing that came to mind, maybe because it's Play Challenge week.
Which I love, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And my best tip is to play with your child. I cannot stress this enough. Oftentimes when parents come into my practice and they're struggling with behavioral issues and tantrums and aggressive behaviors, commonly the first tip that I give parents is to make more time for one-on-one play. Of course, I teach them more intentional skills of how to be their child's play therapist, but I can't stress the importance of play, not only for your child's learning experience, it's how they really truly learn about themselves, about the world around them, and their place in everything, right? But it's also such valuable opportunities for you as the parent to connect and really understand, get into their inner worlds. So that's my top tip for y'all is play. Play, play, play. I don't think we value it enough. I know it's easy to get so wrapped up. We have so many commitments, so many things around the house. It's easy to start cooking and cleaning and doing all the things which we need to do to keep the household going. And play can kind of seem like, this is unproductive. They can do it by themselves. They're happy over there, right? And so I always like to encourage as much as we can, even for 5 to 10 minutes a day, if we can get down on the floor and play with our little ones, we will not regret it. It's not wasted time at all. And I just wanted to say I do have the Play Challenge going on, and if you guys want to sign up for my free email challenge, do so. I think I'm at, what time is it? I'm going to close it in a couple hours just because it's a sequence. So I'll probably close it around 6 because I'm going to release my first email of the challenge. So the challenge is for 7 days, and I just send helpful tips, reflection exercises to your inbox for free, all about play, how to encourage independent play, what toys are best to use, what is our role during play, right? What should we be doing? Frequently asked questions about play. I mean, just lots of information for you guys. So check it out. The link is in my bio if you're interested.
I am going to sign up for that because I have to say that I did your Play Challenge last time, and it's become one of my intentional daily goals. That I know it seems like such an easy, small change, but to actually be present in your mind of saying, like, have I spent 5 minutes one-on-one with each child today? It's very easy to spend the time together, but that one-on-one time being really essential too. So I do love that tip. So it's 2 p.m. here, guys. So that's 4 hours from now if you're here live. I'm going to go and sign up.
Okay, yes.
Thank you for doing this live, Jazmine. It's been wonderful, and I hope everybody who's watching, I am going to save it so it'll be live to watch later for up to 24 hours. So thank you so much for coming and watching, and Jazmine, thank you so much for coming and talking.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Let's do this again soon.
Okay, for sure. Sounds good.
All righty. Bye.
Bye, guys.